I didn't expect when I bought the Nokia 7 Plus that I would like it so much, that it came close to me replacing that with the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. However, it did, and the main reason was because of the camera and of course the texture back. Now the Nokia 7.2 captures a lot what the Nokia 7 Plus had. However, there are some clear changes, especially to the design itself and the camera setup. Apart from that though, it shares a lot of similarities. So the question becomes, is this just as good or is it better? Let's find out in this review of the Nokia 7.2. Now straight from the get-go, the Nokia 7.2, when it comes to the design itself, I kinda really like it, especially because of the frosted back and of course the color that you have with it. If there is a small critique, the camera housing looks a bit small if you ask me, in comparison with the rest of the body. But apart from that, it clearly has some updates when it comes to the 0.1 designs that they had, with of course that bigger notch that I really didn't like. Apart from that though, you can still see that you are talking about a mid-range phone, especially when it comes to the specifications, like still using the Snapdragon 660. I get why they're still using the Snapdragon 660, especially because of the cost, but also because of the 8.1 from Nokia. Now that one has a new CPU inside, and I don't think they want that to compete with this one. So while we are talking about the specifications, let's just run through what the Nokia 7.2 offers when it comes to those specifications. So like I said, we are dealing with a Snapdragon 660, which I'm not the biggest fan of because I feel like this CPU should have been replaced already. Especially because they already used this on a Nokia 7 Plus, which is already 2 years old. Well, almost 2 years old. Apart from that, you have 64 or 128 GB of internal memory and 4 or 6 GB of RAM. In terms of battery, you have a 3500 mAh battery and you can charge it up with 10 watt speed, which isn't significant, but again, this is a mid-range phone, so I don't really feel an issue with that. In terms of display, you have a 6.3 inch LCD display with a 19:9 ratio and a Full HD Plus resolution. Now when it comes to the display, we have a display that Nokia calls a pure display. Now this can go up to max 500 nits, and of course we have our teardrop design instead of course, the bigger notch that we've seen on the 0.1 designs. For myself, the biggest complaint that I have about the display itself, while it doesn't get as bright as I want it to be, I feel like the greens are way too punchy. They are so saturated that when I was taking pictures, I felt like Nokia stepped away from the better pictures that they can take in daytime, and that was worrying me. However, after watching it on my PC, I did see the difference clearly there, and I felt like the pictures were much better than it showcased on the display itself. I'm not saying that the display is bad by any means, it's a pretty good display for the price itself. However, I do have to say that the saturation on the greens especially is a bit too much for me. But apart from that, you can easily enjoy a lot of content on this display, and inside and outside it does get pretty bright. However, outside you can struggle if there is direct sunlight facing the display. Now like I said, with the Nokia 7 Plus, the biggest thing that I liked was of course the texture itself. And I still feel like with this glass back, it feels good in the hand, especially because of the frosted glass. It feels solid and it feels really nice. However, I still feel like if you don't have wireless charging, you should probably go for a textured back or a metal back. There isn't any function for it and it's only more fragile. However, of course you still get some nice effects that you see on the back with a glass back that you cannot replicate with of course a metal or a textured back like the Nokia 7 Plus. However, for me, that just felt better. And when it comes to the software experience, I don't have any issues with it. While Android One is a bit boring and it doesn't do anything special, it does provide quick updates for the Nokia devices. And that is something that a lot of people care for. So I really get that they chose this option instead of making their own skin on top of Android. Especially because Nokia is one of the early adopters of giving you quick updates to their devices. So of course with the Snapdragon 660 you are wondering if you have any performance issue. And when you are using it in day-to-day use, no you don't. I don't really have any issues. I can have multiple apps running on the background. However, when you push the device by having several games open on the background and then play PUBG Mobile for instance, you do notice that you are dealing with a Snapdragon 660 instead of a newer one. But let's dive into the camera setup for the Nokia 7.2, because that is something that really sold me on the Nokia 7 Plus. Now to begin with, yes we have a triple camera setup, but one of those is actually a 5 megapixel depth sensor, so you don't have 3 different focal lengths. The main one is a 48 megapixel wide sensor with an f1.8 aperture. And the second one is of course an ultra wide sensor with 8 megapixel resolution and a 2.2 aperture. In terms of video, you can record up to 4K and 30 frames per second, and you can record of course your 1080p and 30 frames per second as well. For myself, I like the camera itself, the colors are really good, however I'm not the biggest fan of that 48 megapixel sensor. I don't really get the use of it, and I know there is pixel binding with it, but apart from that I don't really feel there's a huge benefit to it. Give me a large sensor with a lower megapixel resolution and I'm good to go. Why wouldn't you do that? But then of course there is also this second sensor, and what I noticed straight away is that there is quite a bit of difference between the two. In terms of color, but also of course on how much light there is coming in. The white lens in low light is pretty much not usable. And in terms of colors, there is quite a bit of difference. Especially when you see this lamp, you can tell the difference, and it's quite a lot. I'm not saying again that this camera is bad by any means, but I do feel like they could have done that better. But again, this is a budget phone, so they don't have that budget to properly utilize those two sensors and make them precisely the same or close to the same. This is something that you mainly see on high-end phones or phones around 600 or above. But when we are talking about the main camera, I do feel like the camera is really good. I love the colors once again on this Nokia 7.2. It can take some amazing shots. And when it comes to the dynamic range, of course this cannot compete with something like the Samsung Galaxy S10. However, surprisingly, in one shot it actually beat the Samsung Galaxy S10. But apart from that, I feel like the lack of proper dynamic range, or Samsung dynamic range, is sometimes in the benefit of a picture. It creates more depth because it keeps the shadows more active. While you can edit the Samsung shot more because there is of course more highlights shown, I feel like this is better for a quick shot. So this is why I preferred a lot of shots on the Nokia 7 Plus for instance over the Samsung Galaxy S9. They started to look flat, and the same is the case for the Nokia 7.2. It has a lot of depth because it keeps more shadows in the picture itself. Now in terms of video recording, like I said, you have 1080p and 30 frames per second and 4K and 30 frames per second. I feel like it's nothing really to be excited about. It's decent, but nothing really special. So in terms of video recording, I don't feel like this is a step up compared to some other Nokia devices out there. Now in low light, I do have some issues with the Nokia 7.2, and this was the same with the Nokia 7 Plus. In low light, pictures are too soft. They try to remove as much grain as possible, and because of that, it just looks too soft. And in night mode itself, you would think that it takes more time to take a shot, but it's actually quite quick, and that's not something you want in a night shot. And what they normally do is of course use different exposure modes and then combine those shots and see what is the best result out there. However, with the Nokia 7.2, it's done in a snap. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense that they have a night mode when it doesn't really dedicate the night mode properly. However, with that being said, I don't feel like it really underperforms to some others out there. I feel like it's maybe a bit more on the top segment compared to some others out there, but it's not the best for the price. But when it comes to the daytime shots, like I said, I still prefer the shots from Nokia. It looks really nice and the colors are amazing on this phone. So the Nokia 7.2, I feel like this is a pretty compelling package for 329 euros. Do I recommend it, or do I feel like there's more competition for the Nokia 7.2 than there was for the Nokia 7 Plus? Definitely. I feel like the Nokia 7.2 does have more competition than when the Nokia 7 Plus was released. However, with that being said, I still feel like the Nokia 7.2 is a pretty compelling package overall, and it's something that I could advise you. Now I still feel like Nokia should release a high-end phone, and I'm really curious to see what Nokia can do with a high-end phone out there. I feel like the Nokia 9 PureView had some good steps, especially when you saw a comparison from Pixel Peeper where it clearly beat out the Huawei. Now I feel like that's quite interesting, but the Nokia 9 PureView of course had its problems, and it came with the Snapdragon 845 that didn't actually natively support 5 cameras, so it took quite a bit to take that picture. However, with that being said, I'm still curious about what Nokia will do with the 9.1. I will leave a link in the description talking about that phone, but I think it's quite compelling what Nokia is doing. And I'm really curious what the future of Nokia holds and if they can climb up back to the top. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think about the Nokia 7.2. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and a comment below. And if you do so, it really does help out with pushing out the video itself. Anyway, have a good one and talk to you guys in the next.